E-commerce is cool and the numbers behind it are super cool, and it comes down to 3 realistic numbers. And anybody listening to this that has an e-commerce store, you can do this with your numbers for the last 30 days and you'll be like, wow, he was right. That's crazy.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. When I was putting together a list of growth topics for this month that could be valuable for our audience, especially with the changing in business environment due to COVID, direct-to-consumer, also known as D2C, strategies was on the top of our list. We wanted to cover D2C from different perspectives, including operations, finance, and marketing. In today's episode, we have our guest, Chase Clymer, who brings a unique perspective for manufacturers and e-commerce merchants from his experience of helping customers getting their e-commerce businesses to grow from the ground up. He also shares his in-field experiences of what makes an e-commerce toolset or architecture, especially Shopify, successful. Chase Clymer is the co-founder at Electric Eye, where he and his team create Shopify-powered sales machines from strategic design, development, and marketing decisions. He's also the host of Honest E-commerce, a weekly podcast where they provide online store owners with honest, actionable advice to increase their sales and grow their business. Let's get to the conversation. Hey Chase, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do and who you help these days?
Yes, my real big boy job these days is I run an e-commerce agency called Electric Eye. We help brands grow through strategic design, development, and marketing initiatives. What that really means is we build beautiful websites and help them sell awesome things online. We're Shopify partners, and it's been a wild ride. And along with that, I'm also a podcast host myself. So you can catch me over on the Honest E-commerce podcast as well if you enjoy listening to the sound of my voice, which personally, I don't, but some people like what I have to say.
I have actually caught up on some of your episodes. They're really good. So I would highly recommend Chase's podcast. It's amazing. So Chase, I'm actually going to touch on the topics you just mentioned about strategic marketing. So let's say if I have a manufacturer who has never done e-commerce before and they have no idea how to start on e-commerce, what would be your recommendation for them?
Oh, yeah. So this is a pretty softball question. If you have a product and you have wholesale accounts and whatnot, and people are buying it off of you, so you know that there's a fit out there in the ecosystem for your product, you should definitely reach out to someone that knows what they're doing, like an agency or a freelancer or anyone else, because it's going to get you selling so much faster than what I usually see happen is people fail through it for 6 months to a year and get frustrated and it doesn't really work. If there's a proven market for your product because other people are buying it and reselling it, you're entering a market that you already know that it'll work. But one of the bigger things with kind of launching a business, so I'll give you some very straightforward, specific advice is just start on Shopify. You can get away with using an off-the-shelf theme. You don't need a custom $60,000, $100,000 website. You don't need oversold on any of that stuff. If you're just getting started and you've got a product and you're a manufacturer or distributor or wholesaler and you're looking to go D2C, just get an off-the-shelf theme and you just got to get that MVP out there because there's so much goofy logistical stuff on the back end you got to figure out, how you're going to deal with returns and who's going to fulfill it, discount codes, email automation, subscriptions, if that's the space you're playing in. There's all that stuff you got to figure out. So don't spend any time worrying about the look and feel of the website. There are amazing premium themes out there in the marketplace, especially on Shopify, that'll get you to where you need to be. I know, like, honestly, from going from $0 to $1 million, you can survive perfectly fine with an off-the-shelf theme.
I couldn't agree more with respect to your thought process about not worrying about the technical stuff when you are simply starting. They should be worrying about the business first, and there is just so much to do in the e-commerce businesses. So thank you for that thought. And since you mentioned Shopify, obviously Shopify has a great ecosystem. It's growing. But do you have any recommendation with respect to any other tools that our listeners can explore?
Yeah, I mean, so here's the deal. We're Shopify experts at the agency, right? And obviously, when all you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. So we use Shopify a lot. With that being said, there are better tools out there and better solutions out there for different types of businesses. I would sometimes recommend, like, so if you just have like a content business or like a website that's just content stuff, like a Squarespace or a WordPress website would be just fine. You don't need Shopify. I mean, if you're a restaurant, you need more specific stuff than like a direct-to-consumer website, i.e. a Shopify site could offer you. If you're more wholesale, Shopify is a terrible solution. If you're B2B, Shopify is a terrible solution. So like there's a whole bunch of other stuff you can look at. But if you're selling a cool product direct-to-consumer, you're shipping someone a box of something, or, even these days we are getting a little bit more into digital, like Shopify is probably a great solution for that if you're just selling a product to an end customer with no other weirdness. But kind of once you kind of get out of that core thing that Shopify is really good at, sometimes begins to be more work than it's worth to bend Shopify's will into what you want it to be, trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, as some people would say. So just kind of really understand, like, Shopify is great at doing one thing and one thing well. And anytime, like, the further and further you get away from that, it's probably not a good idea. Perfect example is the other day, someone wanted to do launch a B2B business, and they were looking at Shopify, and I just told them this is a terrible idea. And I introduced them to somebody that knew BigCommerce very well, and they're off to the races now, kind of exploring that as how to launch their business. So all of the solutions that exist out there in the ecosystem, they have their fit and their perfects. It's just I've kind of tied my cart to the Shopify horse because we're really, really good at it. And it's a lot more profitable to just stick to what you know.
Okay, amazing. So since you touched on B2B a bit, and obviously, our listeners are going to be mixed of B2C as well as B2B. So can you touch on the differences of how B2C differs from B2B as far as a tool is concerned, like Shopify?
Yeah, I mean, just like for the customization of like wholesale orders and bulk ordering, Shopify is just a pain in the butt to make that work the way that you probably want it to work. So if you're looking at launching a Shopify website and you don't have like a plan to go direct to consumer right off the rip, it might not be the best fit for you. You got to use it for what it's good at, and it's for going to the end customer. So, bulk purchasing or like really custom like purchase orders, or like doing net 30 terms, like more things that are definitely more more traditional business to business sales techniques. Like Shopify isn't built to do that. So you have to like work around it to make Shopify do that. If you are trying to launch a B2B website on Shopify, like it's just a lot more work. But if you're looking to expand direct to consumer, that's a new growth goal for you. Then you're just launching a direct to consumer website on a platform that's perfectly great for it. So you're going to be adding your products appropriately, building a user experience that makes sense and it's good looking and it elevates whatever brand that you're bringing to the table. But again, the hard part is going to be like, you can build the most beautiful store in the world, but how are you going to get people to see it?
And are there any specific verticals in B2C that you would definitely not recommend Shopify? Or are there any verticals that you would definitely recommend Shopify?
Oh, man, if you're in fashion, or if you're selling like a consumer packaged good, or just like a physical product, you got a low SKU count, Shopify is amazing. On the flip side of that, if you're selling a Vice product, so this would be anything that like you probably can't advertise on Facebook or Google, where you have like some really obscure payment provider because Shopify Pay won't accept you because you have a Vice product. I can get a little more specific on that if you want me to, but I think most listeners will get it. Shopify's probably not the best idea for you. And then if you have actually, I enjoy this question because if you have a super insane SKU count, like really, really high, or you've got a really, really variable products that are super customizable, Shopify may not be the best idea for you. But I mean, if you're selling like some tangible, cool, good, like some real product I can hold in my hand and, people want it and it's super photogenic, Shopify is going to be great for that.
Okay, can you touch a little bit more on the variable product that you mentioned and what are going to be the problems with Shopify?
So this is a problem that Shopify has, but most agency where their salt knows how to solve for it now. But Shopify has an inherent 99 variant limit on their products. So an easy way to hit that limit would be have one product in if you have it in 10 colors and 10 sizes, you've just hit 100 variants. So if you think about it a little bit more obscure, so say you have one product in 3 sizes, in 5 colors, in 5 fit, or you can have it be this comes up a lot in more when you get more into manufacturing and buying parts or buying car parts. For sure, this comes up all the time because you got so many various makes and models and years and all that stuff. So dealing with high variant levels on Shopify is sometimes a pain in the butt.
Okay, amazing. So some of the fashion verticals, I would say, might not be a great fit just because they might have a lot more styles or sizes.
I think with the styles, it's fine. Some of the biggest fashion stores on the internet are on Shopify. Fashion Nova is hands down, one of the biggest powerhouses out there, and they're running on Shopify right now.
So other than the variable metrics SKU problem that you mentioned, do you see any other problems in the B2C space with Shopify?
You can get away with it. There are some wholesale stuff out there. And if your wholesale system is pretty simple, Shopify might, it might make sense. But again, it's you're not using a tool that was built for that. I believe, there are probably better tools out there to solve for your use case for going business to business. Again, it goes back to it's use the right tool for the job. And if you're going business to business, there are better tools. If you're going business to customers, Shopify it's hard to find one that, will beat it.
Okay, amazing. And since you mentioned that use the right tool for the right job, that's really important in my opinion. So can you talk about some of the architecture that you typically see when you work with any specific customer? Do you see any specific tools that you commonly implement along with Shopify?
Yeah, that's a great question. Shopify's got, like I said, they're really good at their core product and what they're really good at. And then anything that's kind of bolted on top of that is anyone that's used to Shopify understands there's this whole app ecosystem out there. So when you're talking about tools and stuff that people have installed in their stores, it usually is an app that they have, right? And, we've been doing this forever. And so we've used almost every app under the sun at this point, and we understand, which ones are actually gonna work for people and which ones are kind of trash. So I won't mention any of the bad ones, but I'll mention some of the good ones that we use all the time. So I think one of our favorite tools to implement out there is for email automation and email campaigns. It's called Klaviyo. It's hands down our favorite email automation tool out there. We won't work with any other platform on it, honestly. That one's our favorite. That one's fantastic. If you're talking about subscriptions, Recharge is definitely the number one in the game these days. Does some really, really cool stuff for doing recurring orders and subscriptions. Like I said before, when you're talking about doing operations and stuff, you're trying to figure out how you're going to deal with returns and all that stuff. If you're getting to a sales velocity that's pretty high and you're dealing a lot more with customer service, Gorgeous is an amazing customer service ticketing tool and chatbot that ties just perfectly in with Shopify. It was almost tailor-made for Shopify. So that one's one that we are oftentimes telling clients about. Again, I said Shopify does certain things well, but they don't really go beyond that core functionality. So recently, we're recording this about a week before. It's actually an exact week before American Thanksgiving. So next week's going to be Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And we helped almost all of our clients implement more advanced gift carding. And you do that through Rise.ai is an amazing tool there. I could go on, but those are just the ones that come top of mind for me.
Okay. Since you mentioned gift card, do you see any specific strategy that work with respect to gift card with the customers that you typically work with?
Yeah. One, if you just want to hear a whole 30-minute episode about it, we just did that on the podcast. We had the team from Rise AI on the podcast, and they were talking about all the crazy strategies that their customers were having for it. So if this is interesting to you, just go find that on the Honest E-commerce website. But specifically, the one that really stood out to me is when you have this advanced functionality on your site, you can instead of giving a coupon code, you can give them store credit, gift card cash, and people that the perceived value of that is so much higher than, I'm going to give you 15% off this $100 item versus I'm going to give you $15 in store credit. Like one of those sounds way cooler, right?
Yeah, definitely. And, just to retouch on your point about the link for the podcast. So what we are going to do is we are going to be including that link as part of this podcast. So if anybody wants to check that out, they can check that link.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool time. And then kind of going on, it goes in line with the gift card thing is also just like customer loyalty programs is what we're seeing a lot, especially a lot of people are going to dump a bunch of money into acquiring new customers right now because of it's what you do with Black Friday, Cyber Monday. You're trying to acquire new customers and sell them whatever your cool deal is, your cool products during the holidays. The next thing you got to do is re-engage those customers and try to raise the lifetime value of them, right? So your like investment is way more profitable on that acquisition cost. So oftentimes people are using like kind of loyalty programs and you can build them out through a bunch of different apps in the ecosystem. But yeah, that's like a great touch point to kind of follow up after the holidays and, give people like double points or like turn those points into gift cards, like I just said. But yeah, that's another kind of great strategy to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. And in fact, since you mentioned so many different KPIs there, I wanted to know if you have any insight on your favorite KPI that you definitely recommend tracking.
Oh, I'll give you 3 with an asterisk because there's a 4th one that like I'm always looking at. But e-commerce is cool and the numbers behind it are super cool. And it comes down to 3 realistic numbers. And anybody listening to this that has an e-commerce store, you can like do this with your numbers for the last 30 days and you'll be like, wow, he was right. That's crazy. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into the back end of your store and you're going to look. I always like to do last 30 days. That's a pretty good snapshot. But unless you had like some crazy sales or you went viral or something like that, it might not be a good idea to look at that. I'd look at like your more average month, right? So go and look at like an average month and you're going to want to look at your conversion rate, right? How many people came to the site and actually converted? Conversion rate is only compare your conversion rate to yourself. Don't compare it to anyone else in the industry because they're selling something different than you. Their offer is different than yours. Their brand is different than yours. If your friend's conversion rate's, 3% and yours is 2%, who cares? Like that doesn't matter. You just need to tie your success to your previous metrics. Like, don't look at anyone else. So you're going to look at your conversion rate. And then the next thing you're going to want to look at is you're going to want to look at your traffic. So that's your sessions, not your unique visitors. You like want to look at your total sessions for the month. And then you want to look at your average order value for that month, right? So like what's the average order value of I don't think I have to explain these KPIs. Smart people listen to this podcast. So you got 10,000 visitors, a 2% conversion rate, and a $75 average order value. That comes out to about $15,000 a month, right? So that'd be like your gross sales for the month. So what we're going to focus on if like we moved forward with a project or what you should be kind of talking about with your team or your contractors, your freelancers, your agency partner, whomever, is you should focus on one of those KPIs, right? And the one I always like to start with is the conversion rate because that one is like the biggest lever that you can really pull at the beginning is you want to like look at your user experience because your user experience is directly responsible for your conversion rate. You got to make it easy to navigate. You need to make it easy to understand. You want to make sure people aren't falling out of the funnel in goofy places because if goofy stuff's happening with your website, definitely has a lot to do with speed and kind of like the customer journey and how that flow is mapped out. So let's say you spend some time and energy and money and effort on your user experience, right? This is literally talking about your store design and how it's set up. You spend some effort on that and say you take you put all that effort in it. Now you moved the needle on your conversion rate from 2% to 3%. Your monthly sales have now jumped to $22,500 without like doing any work on your average order value or on your traffic, right? But that one's like the biggest one to focus on first. Once you get that to a place that you're proud of, then the easiest lever to move, honestly, is traffic. You can do paid acquisition, right? You can go into Facebook or Google or Pinterest. Now you got TikTok that you can do ads with. So you can definitely pour a bunch of money in there. You want to make sure you're getting qualified traffic. One thing to note, though, is when you do increase traffic with a bunch of new people, your conversion rate is going to drop back down a bit, but it's going to add so many more people into your flywheel for retargeting efforts, which, that's why we like to use Klaviyo because we're having it do the heavy lifting on like an awesome drip sequence that shows people the features and benefits and values of the brand over time and educates them on the product. So, maybe they're going to be exposed 4 months ago to some ad and kind of get in the funnel because they were thinking about purchasing and then they keep getting these emails over time and then they purchase. That's kind of how you're building out this flywheel. But let's say that now you've like So you're investing a couple thousand, $10,000, $20,000 a month into ads, and you tripled your traffic. Now you're tripling your monthly average. So you're going from, 22.5 up to $67,500 a month in sales. And you're only focusing now. The only focus has been on 2 KPIs. The other KPI, it's a lot harder to move the needle on. This is one where you got to get like really tricky and fun with upsells, cross-sells, bundles, post-purchase upsells, is average order value. That one is where I don't believe that there's a good like off-the-shelf plugin in the Shopify ecosystem that will allow you to manipulate average order value very well. But if you find a trusted partner and you work with them on a strategy of like increasing the average order value, obviously, again, you move that. It's going to raise the bar here. But those 3 are the ones that we like to focus on at the agency. And then, of course, I said there was a 4th, which is lifetime value. So, obviously it's a lot easier to sell to someone that you've already sold to before. So those are like re-engagement campaigns and again, like loyalty programs like we just talked about, doing cool things with like, store credit and gift cards. Those are some ways to try to re-engage customers and bring them back again. Because, oftentimes people are talking about customer acquisition costs and all that stuff, and Facebook and Google are getting so competitive that it's like really increasing what you have to spend to acquire a new customer on these like paid channels, that if you've got a low average order value or like a really cheap product, you might be paying paying the cost of your product to acquire a new customer. So you have to make up your money on the tail end of it and like get more sales from that customer. I just went off on an extremely long tangent there. Do you have any questions for me about all that?
That's actually amazing. I think, the KPIs are really important. And that's one of the things that I really wanted to cover in this topic so that our listeners can get insight into that. So I thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I believe there is a video where I walk through this on our YouTube channel as well, using some easy math as well. But I mean, it's one of those things where it's just me writing numbers on a piece of paper, but it really just simplifies e-commerce. And it comes down to these 3 KPIs. That's where you need to focus if you want to talk about growing the top line. Obviously, there's ways to grow margin, but that's a little bit more kind of on the business operations side of things. But if you're talking about you want to hit a certain monetary goal, you got to focus on 3 things.
Okay, amazing. And on that note, I think, we have to include the video link as part of this podcast as well. So if anybody wants to check that out, they can check. And I'm actually personally going to check that as well, because you can always learn about KPIs and you can draw insight even for, other businesses. And hopefully we can learn from it as well.
Oh, yeah. Once you get it down, it's pretty simple. We talked about this in kind of the pre-show, but, I wanted to I can give some rough numbers and an example of a client that we did this with. So we started working with her back in 2019, probably in the summer, and we kind of were working on some smaller projects, and we had some quick wins there, and we were like, all right, look, like here's the deal, here are your numbers. This is the road. This is how you get to $1 million. And we did a lot of work on the user experience of the website. This was a client that, she had built this website herself using off-the-shelf themes, making all the choices herself, which is, that's all well and good. But if you don't understand how customers like to shop or best practices for e-commerce, sometimes if you make a wonky decision in your website design or the layout or how things are filtered or how things are kind of played in the navigation, it could be detrimental to your conversion rate. So we did a lot of work of kind of polishing what she had already had there. So, going and looking at what she had and just making it as much better. How can we make this as awesome as it can be from what we got here? So we did all that work there and brought the conversion rate up a lot. Instilled a lot of awesome remarketing applications through, again, automated email marketing. We actually dove into SMS as well. And we did some really good work on Facebook and Instagram to kind of bring people back into the funnel. And we're like, all right, like when people get here, they're usually going to buy. Like now it's time to let's pour some gas on this fire. It's going pretty good. So we go to the top of the funnel, you know what I mean? So we started working on strategic ways to bring new people into the business, new eyes on the product. So this year, the goal of this year was to help her hit her first $1 million. We're probably going to be leaning more into 1.5 by the end of the year.
That's amazing. I think with COVID, if she can do that, $1 million is what you mentioned within 2 years. That's an amazing goal.
Yeah, well, the goal was for this year in 2020 was to help her hit that first $1 million a year. But we already did it. Like we passed it a month and a half ago, I think.
That's phenomenal. And for your services, I guess, I don't know, how much you typically charge, but that's a huge ROI, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it just goes back to the numbers where it's like, all right, these are the things that we're working on. This is how it's going to work.
Okay, Chase, so let's say if somebody wants to work with you, do you have any specific actionable advice that you can offer with respect to designing the 30, 60, 90-day plan? So let's say if I'm a customer for you and I'm coming to you, what would you recommend with respect to aligning the e-commerce strategy or starting on the e-commerce strategy as of today?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, first and foremost is like this. You got to be in it for the long haul. There's no silver bullet. There's nothing that's going to make you an overnight millionaire. You just got to understand it takes hard work. That's the first thing. Is like if you come to the table with realistic expectations, you're already ahead of the game with then other people that I've met or had conversations with. So the first is always just having realistic expectations, right? You got to understand just like if your goal is like some super cool, awesome number, which numbers like don't matter. You know what I mean? If $1 million, $10 million, whatever, like those are just arbitrary numbers. But if you have big goals, you need to understand that it's going to take a big investment of time and energy and a monetary investment to get you there. You're not going to see any insane returns on any of this stuff. But with that being said, I mean, we're pretty easy to work with. We're a small shop, but we bring in about one or two new clients a month. We start small, it's like, all right, let's kind of get under the hood of your business and let's learn what is working, what isn't working, and let's develop that strategic plan together. So that's usually the first engagement. Well, usually that is the first engagement with everybody that we start working with. And then we just kind of pick a direction, focus on a KPI, and let's make it better.
Okay, amazing. So I think that's it for today. Do you have any last minute closing thoughts?
No, I mean, this was super fun. I think we covered a lot of ground here. I want to go back to talking about kind of the two areas of e-commerce businesses, kind of where they are in their business life cycle. I mean, if you're working on getting your first initial sales, like, I think that $0 to $10,000 is the hardest part of starting an e-commerce business. When you're in that stage, just focus on organic sales, completely ignore paid traffic. Like you're going to light so much money on fire and invest in weird, people that are stealing your money as far as it comes along with like gurus or whatnot to like get your paid media off the ground. Nobody can help you find product market fit, which I believe like once you kind of hit that 10K in sales a month, like you're kind of finding that product market fit. You're figuring out what your offer is and what your value is and why people want to buy your product. So when you're going from that $0 to $10,000 a month, just focus on organic sales. After that, you can start introducing paid. But I would say the hardest thing to do is go from 0 to 10K a month. Going from 10 to 100K is a lot easier. And then going from 100 to, something crazier is even easier. So.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Chase, and for your insight as well.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up stuff from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to know further about Chase, check his podcast at honestecommerce.co and his agency at electriceye.io. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Michael Begg from AMZ Advisors, who brings a unique perspective on D2C from Amazon as a marketing channel. Also the interview with Jason Chester from Infinity QS, who touches on D2C from a real-time manufacturing quality monitoring standpoint. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.